there's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bod Father.
Man, this stuff rocks.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Hour, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Hey, this is Dave McAnally from Derision Cult, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Hey, everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I am your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bod Father, and happy Halloween to all you little ghouls and goblins that are out there, because it's just right around the corner. And on today's podcast, I've got my man, Dave McAnally, who has done my intros for BODS Mayhem Hour. He's been on the live roundtable discussions for BODS Mayhem Hour. Basically, he is part of BODS Mayhem Hour.
Getting that way. How's it going, Bob?
So Dave is with the Derision Cult.
Yeah.
If nobody doesn't know that by now, and they have released their new single entitled Slaves Rebuild off their current album, Mercenary Notes Part 1. And the music video for this song will be released on October 16th, which this podcast will air after that. Okay. So you would definitely want to give him a fair shot and listen. So what's up, my man?
Doing good, bud. You know, it's fun. You were talking about we've done all these roundtables, and I keep looking at my camera. I have to sit here so you can see my hand. But,
gestures in there.
Do you remember we had the roundtable on the Metallica album, 72 Seasons?
Sure.
That was like a week after it came out or something like that?
Yeah.
And my first thought, this always happens to me. Time of Newman. I was like, dude, these songs are way too long. They needed editing and, Well, here we are, 6 months later, maybe? And, dude, I totally get it now. Like I'm like, especially since they're playing those songs live, like the 72 Seasons, and it totally works. So that album has grown on me quite a bit. So I think I said my favorite song was Inamorata. I think I would have to go now to Shadows Follow, and You Must Burn is my favorite. I think I said You Must Burn then too. But anyways, I want to clear that up. That they're long songs, but they shouldn't. They need to be that long. So that's what I've been doing. That's a big thing I've been doing since I talked to you last, John. Was reevaluating 72 Seasons.
And it's like I said during that podcast, man. They have grown to adapt. These guys are up in age. And I'll say this about any bands that are out there that are still cooking today, that be thankful that they're still here and doing what they're doing. To me, I think Metallica's still putting out quality stuff. And I know people's going to disagree with that, but hey, everybody has an opinion. That's beautiful, and that's fine.
Yeah. I don't have any. I've seen Metallica so many times at this point. It's kind of like been there, done that. But everybody I know who's going to this tour, it's all like father sons and like, uncles and nephews and like these rites of passage, which I think that's awesome. I went to that's my first Kiss concert was sort of like that. My first Metallica concert was kind of like that. And so, in a way, it's kind of sad that or not sad, but watching your bands become ththese generational things. But it's pretty cool to see, that they're kind of in that world. But that's I've observed that as well. Like everyone I know is going to that. They're bringing it's fathers bringing sons, and moms bringing daughters and stuff like that.
Or you're a big sports fan like me and you both are, and you see a guy come into baseball, football, or basketball, and you watch their whole career, and then it's like they're retiring, and you're like, oh shit, oh God, I remember when he came into the league. I'm getting old. It's like, what the hell happened?
I was helping. I did some work consulting work for just some marketing stuff for PSA, the company that does like the grading for baseball
Yeah.
stuff. And kind of like my canary in the coal mine, the keyword that I always watched was my favorite. Mark McGwire is like my favorite baseball player as a kid because we were like I'm talking like the A's when it was like him, Jose Canseco, Ricky Henderson, like that era. That was like my jam as a kid. And that fucking Mark McGwire Olympic card, you remember that one where he's like in his USA? A mint condition one that's like top condition,
like a 10.
Those are going 25 grand.
Oh yeah, easily.
Now I have 3 of those, but they've been stored like how a 5th grader would have stored them. So they go for like $20. So,
they're still in good condition.
Wow. That's what I've learned in the course of working with that company is what constitutes like a $25,000 condition card. That means like that thing has basically never been touched by a human hand, I
bought a Albert Pujols and I was like, I had the money at the time. I'm going to buy it for financial purposes down the road because he's going to be huge and he already is huge. I mean, he's going to blow out the water with all this stuff, but I got his rookie card, score rookie card. It's an 8.5, 8.5. So I'm still saying
that's grading on it. Is it an 8.5?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, the 25 grade, it'd be like a 10, like a 9, 10. But yeah, dude, cards like that. Yeah. Do you watch the auctions on it? Like what it's going for?
No, I have not. I have not watched any of the auctions or anything. I normally I'll go to burbankcards.com or get them on eBay and look that way. And I'm surprised with some of the cards that they got in their stock that you can buy pretty reasonable, man. They're really fair in their prices. And like Aaron Judge, I buy a lot of Aaron Judge. I buy a lot of Acunas from the Braves. I know we're off subject here, folks, but but yeah, card collecting for me is huge. I love it. I love every aspect about it because every pack of cards you buy, and I know they're very expensive these days, which I rarely buy any pack of cards now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just buy the boxes,
Yeah,
might as well. And
I had a bunch. I mean, I probably stopped collecting cards when I was like 13, 14. But around the time I got a guitar. So everything I have is from the early 90s or early 90s, late 80s. But it's funny looking at some of those cards now. Like I had the Bo Jackson one where I had like 4 of them where he's got like his shoulder pads and the baseball bat. Remember that?
The 90 score. I've got that.
Well, there was an issue where they had to stop printing them mid-season because that was a Nike owned that image.
Really?
Yeah. So anyways, they didn't do as big of a run of that one as they did some of the other ones. And so if you have them, and again, it goes the same thing, like conditions, everything. And,
dude, do you remember
books and everything,
Do you remember the 88 Topps Billy Ripken?
Is that the one where they had the error for what position he played?
No. On the barrel of the bat, he's standing here like this. And on the barrel, like underneath here on the barrel, it said fuck face.
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
I've got 3 of those, but I also got every card that was made in that series to try to block it out and everything.
That's awesome. I never knew that. That was
yes.
I remember that being part of card collecting's errors and ones they had to edit things out. I remember I had a Nolan Ryan one where it said he played third base. It was Nolan Ryan was who I was thinking.
He went Robin Ventura's ass.
Pitching stats on the back, but then on the front it said I think Topps made that one.
They should have made a card. They should have made a card of him and Robin Ventura and put TKO on it.
Yeah, right.
When they got in that fight.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, my man. How excited are you to have this new single entitled Slaves Rebuild that's coming out right now?
Well, super cool. So this is the first time that track's been out for, and it's funny that it's interesting that we waited so long to put this out, but timeline of this EP, I think last time we talked, well, we have talked about Mercenary Notes. That EP came out in December of last year. And that was the one, and, the big tracks that we kind of pushed were, there was a track, Bastards of the World, kind of the stompers and the rockers. And we also had that track Deaf Blood, which had Chris Connolly from like Ministry and Pigface singing, and Reeves Gabrels from The Cure and David Bowie's band on lead guitar. And like we kind of pushed like the heavy things, which, those were, we got great responses for those. But this track Slaves Rebuild, when I kind of demoed that with Sean, he was really drawn to that because it has like acoustic guitars in it, and it's got kind of an outlaw country vibe to it. And, the theme of the song is really kind of universal. Just this whole notion of how sometimes we get caught in hamster wheels working for things that, we don't necessarily, kind of that, that quote from Fight Club, you work a job you hate to buy things you don't need. And, it kind of it's all about that, kind of how we get stuck in grinds like that. And that's just been this slow burn that we've had fans and listeners tell us, they really, really like that track. And so we decided we should give it more love than we have. Justin Broderick I swear this was not on purpose. I happen to be wearing a Godflesh shirt, but these guys did a remix of that track. And Godflesh is out on tour and has been. I just saw him in Chicago, actually, at Coldways. Is awesome. And so we kind of repushed that single, their remix of it. But we kept getting all these, we just got a lot of positive reactions. And when it came time and we had the opportunity to shoot, let's shoot a proper video, that song really kind of lent itself to, just kind of the narrative. And so it really kind of came about, this single, with kind of the video first. And so we're really excited from that standpoint. We worked with a guy named Joel Lopez from Lumbra Productions here in Chicago, who is, for anyone who's familiar with the Chicago scene, he does a lot of Ayatoya stuff, the Joy Thieves, did a lot of the Pigface, to a lot of their videos. He's a cat here in Chicago, and it was a lot of fun, man. We rented out a studio and it's a very Chicago video, and we borrowed a lot of cues from the old Wax Tracks videos with a lot of layering and things like that. So I'm really excited because it really feels like a video you would have seen on like Liquid Television or, some of the old industrial stuff in the early 90s. So really excited about that. But yeah, it turned out great. One of the other things that I think was really cool about it, and this was like a fine bit of serendipity, when you see the video, the main character in it is played by a guy named Pete Berwick. And Pete, he's an interesting dude. I actually have, he wrote this book here called The Boys, which is the story of story of a band in the 70s called The Boys. And it's kind of a gonzo journalism thing. But Pete, as I found out, we kind of cast him through an agency here in Chicago, is like an OG cowpunk guy, which worked out great for this. He really kind of understood the vibe we were going for. But it was a lot of fun hanging out with Pete, hearing stories about. He has stories about hanging out with Johnny Paycheck, and he'd been in some movies with Samuel L. Jackson in the early days. So he had some pretty awesome stories about that. And we had a lot of fun shooting it, man.
Working with Joel on this video, did he get exactly what you guys were looking for? Did he bring something to the table that was more than what you were looking for?
Sean Payne, who is, produces these tracks and, is of the band Cyanotic. A lot of people don't know this, but he has a very, very strong kind of film background, has done a lot of video production stuff. And, a lot of, you'll see it in live Cyanotic track, live Cyanotic show, but he had a lot of really good kind of practical effect ideas. So Sean brought that. What Joel brought to that to that production in addition to all the equipment. And he really did a good job of getting everything done that we wanted to get done. And that is a piece of shooting a video that I am like, I just didn't know anything about, you know, but like lining up shots, like, and I'm talking literally in terms of, okay, at 1 p.m. we're doing this, and at 1:20 we're going to take a water break. And he ran that thing like a military operation. So what it enabled it to do is we were able to make a lot of use of the time that we had. And so some of the things that Joel did that I think I had never envisioned that turned out amazing. There's 2 shots that Joel did in this video that I like selfishly kind of go back and rewatch them because they turned out so cool. Joel is also a drone pilot, so we got some really cool aerial drone footage things that turned out way cooler than I ever would have envisioned. And so that was really neat. The other thing is there's a scene in there where Pete's the character's kind of like counting money and looking like disheveled after a day of work. And when you see the video, it looks like Pete's sitting in this room that must just have a 30-foot ceiling. Like it does one of those kind of zoom out things. Yeah. But because Joel is really good at, perception and, messing with lenses, he's actually sitting in a closet. We just made it look, he did a lot of working with angles and using some trickery like that without having to do like special effects. Because everything in that video is, there's really no CGI or anything. It's all kind of practical stuff, which, for us, that's cool because, we're old school sci-fi nerds and things like that. So I deliberately want to do this kind of like how a John Carpenter movie would have been made, Oh, yeah. So Joel was instrumental in kind of how to manipulate the camera and the lens in such a way that you would get these effects. So you won't see there's no fakery or anything in it. So I'm really excited about that. I think one of the other things Joel did that is really interesting is and this is another thing that I learned working with Joel, because it wouldn't have even occurred to me, is the hue and the overall just color tone of the video has like a personality that sort of changes over the course of the video, and as different scenes are more tense, different color palettes come in and morph, and you don't notice. You might notice it now that I brought it up, but you don't as you're watching it. And that kind of stuff and that attention to detail, those are all things that he was thinking through, and he spent a lot of time editing. So those things are really cool. So I guess that's 3 things. Those 2, the drone shots, the crazy angles, and making using certain color palettes to express different moods were all stuff that I didn't even occur to me, but guys like him know what they're doing.
What's it mean to you as a musician having as many EPs and albums out in today's music world, especially as much as you've had? Because I mean, it could change in the instant, man.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I took a lot of, because I guess I'd call them demos, and I condensed that all into one big thing called Prior Machines. And it's all the stuff that's basically pre-glitch mode, before, it connected with that label. And, it's funny because there's a lot of tracks there, and I'm always scratching my head at how much people listen to those on Bandcamp, because they feel pretty amateur to me now compared to what we're doing. But yeah, it is what it is. Today, though, we talk a lot about that because you and I, we're old school metal guys, and I'm still an album guy. We were just talking about the Metallica album and like the opinions, and I like to hold things and all that. I think I still like to do that just because there's the art form to it. I mean, just having the opportunity to create artwork, sequencing tracks so it kind of tells a story. That there's a real art to that I enjoy, and Sean definitely does too, and especially with the new Cyanotic EP that came out, that kind of taking you almost like it's like a soundtrack of a movie. There's a real skill in doing that. That kind of gets lost when, and I think what you're referring to is just dropping singles and things like that. Kind of gets lost in that kind of a world. However, I'm not naive to the notion that that's kind of how people consume music now. But for us, though, we've been pretty fortunate that people want to listen to the EPs that we're doing and the albums. We just recently dropped. We did kind of a campaign where we were dropping remixes of Mercenary Notes Part 1, and this EP here, this is a double disc album. Is 18 tracks of remixes, and we're doing a limited run of these double disc sets, and we're selling them. I mean, to my surprise, actually, in the last year, Derision Cult's had the Mercenary Notes EP itself, which was on CD. We did these cassette singles of Death Blood, and these are almost sold out.
Wow.
And then we did this double disc set of all the remixes. And that's, it sells briskly on Bandcamp and sells, the CDs. But I think we're kind of in that intersection where we have two kinds of sets of fans. There are the people, especially in genres like industrial and metal too. There's still those listeners who want the physical CD. And I think that's different than, maybe like future pop and, some of these, hit single type people, or maybe that kind of stuff's not so important. But so we have that, but then we definitely, especially in the last few months, Spotify and streaming and all that is really started to pick up. And I think these remixes have had a lot to do with that. So for me, I still appreciate the art, but, and we'll keep on doing that, keep on doing EPs. I like EPs because I feel like full lengths. I want to leave people wanting to hear more, not wishing they heard less.
Yeah.
That's something my a guitar teacher used to tell me about putting sets together. You always want to leave them wanting more, not wishing they heard less. And I kind of subscribe to that ethos.
It's true. With these sales of the mixes, these remix albums that you got at the double disc, and plus the cassettes, man, are you seeing more of industrial fans buying them or metal fans? If they say, okay, I'm a huge industrial fan, have you seen kind of more of the other?
That's a good question. It's a good question because I'm paying a lot of attention to it. There are two, in terms of the physical albums, I think it's more that industrial crowd, especially with these remixes, because like Assemblage 23 did a mix on here, Morris Black, Stabbing Westward, the aforementioned, we've got the Godflesh mix on here.
Mm-hmm.
Actors, which is this phenomenal, I guess you'd call them synthwave band from Canada, did a mix of Death Blood that I really like. So fans of those bands are checking that out, which is cool because I think, I think there's a good cross section of electronic listeners. But I think it is opposite on streaming sides. What I found when I look at the biggest playlists that we had tracks added to on Spotify, there's one that's this Brazilian metal list that added Your Hope Failed, which is probably our most thrashy track. And that has kind of taken off. And then we get a lot of playlists for our more kind of fast aggro stompers getting added to like gym playlists. They say workout stuff. I pay attention to this stuff. And I look at what else is on there. It's like, Slipknot and, stuff that pisses you off and makes you want to lift weights. And, so I think it's funny because I do think the physical CDs tend to be more kind of pure form, kind of industrial fans. but the streaming, the metalheads stream us more is what it looks like, which I'm cool with that. We've been talking a lot with booking a couple booking agents about shows next year, and that's the feedback I always get is you got to be playing to a metal crowd. So that's maybe what we'll do next year.
But how crazy is this? This just hit me. I mean, when you just said that, you're going to be touring still on this Mercenaries Note Part 1 plus some of the older stuff. I mean, it's still going to be vibing.
Yeah. Well, we're working on all the Part 2 stuff. The way this all came about was, we started with like 12 tracks, and very early on we made the decision like this would be a lot more of a engaging listen and better strategy to do these as 2 EPs. So we've been kind of behind the scenes working on the Part 2 stuff, and we've got some cool surprises and guest people on there. Reeves Gabrels is back doing solos on a couple tracks. We'll probably drop that if all goes according to plan right around the time like shows are really happening next spring is the plan right now. So I think we'll have some new stuff to showcase. And it's funny because Mercenary Part 1 is definitely, I was just telling Sean this the other day, this is the only thing I've ever put out that I can actually listen to a year later, I think a lot of artists are like this. They like put something out and 3 months later they hear all the things they wish they would have done differently and they never listen to it again. And these tracks seem to have escaped that for me, which I'm very happy about. And I think I attribute that to where, how meticulous Sean is with mixing and, making. I'm not very good at being attentive to detail, and he really is. So, as a result, we have tracks that, stand up.
Dave has me on a track on here. Everybody just let everybody know about that. I'm going to be on there on one of them. So
he's going to be doing an intro.
That's right. It's going to be my intro.
I can tell you this. One of the things I'm really excited about is we found this organist. We have a track on there that on this upcoming one, actually kind of inspired a little bit by how well Slaves Rebuild turned out, where we were kind of mixing these outlaw country and industrial elements. We delve further into that on Part 2, and and also blues, because we're Chicago kids and we need to kind of wear the Chicago blues on our sleeve a little bit
for sure.
So we have like a track that's kind of got an old school Buddy Guy, Albert Collins sort of shuffle to it, and we found this organ player, this kid in Brazil actually, who cut this killer like old school Deep Purple distorted organ solo on this track that like I can't wait for people to hear, because I'm like a huge Uriah Heep fan, and when I think of like those early Heep albums where it's basically the organs is the song, and I'm really excited for that one to come out. We have some guest vocalists that'll be on that too. So that one will be really cool.
I know we didn't get to talk about this the last time because I know you was a little iffy on Slaves Rebuild, but now after getting it out there and everybody hearing it, now are you more comfortable with it now with kind of where it's a lot of country vibe to it? Are you now comfortable with this to let everybody hear this?
Yeah, for sure, man. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be interesting because we've got a show on kind of the first live incarnation of this band on December 16th here in Chicago at the Livewire Lounge. And we've been rehearsing that track live. And that is a cool freaking sound, man. Big industrial drums with acoustic. I'm playing, playing my Taylor, and Brad's going to be playing all the electric kind of ambient stuff. And dude, I'm like, that's probably the track I'm most excited to play live. We're going to do a couple other tracks that have acoustic guitars and stuff that we haven't released yet. But not only did it kind of get a good reception and people are into it, but now that we're kind of translating these songs to setting live, I'm like, oh fuck, this is awesome. So it's a cool, I all around happy about it. And I really like, on the Mercenary mixes, we had Justin Broderick, Godflesh, did a mix of that track. Stoneburner from Baltimore did a remix of it, and then also our friends in Bellhead here in Chicago did one, and all three of them have like very different takes on the original. Bellhead's almost has like a punk vibe to it. Stoneburner's is like very I don't, it feels like modern industrial is probably the way I would say it. And Justin just made a total horror show out of it. Like it sounds like a song that like monsters murder people too when you hear his. The fact that it kind of it's that what's the word, flexible of a track to be kind of interpreted in all those different ways is pretty cool too.
See, I'm glad that this track has grown on you, because in the back of my mind, I was going to tell you last time, Dave, I think that's your sleeper, because last time I talked to you, it was like, it's on there. I'm a little iffy about it, but hey, it made it. So I dig it right now. And now look at you. You're happy as a kid.
I'll tell you this. We actually made there's a second part of it on the next too. And
there you go.
And we're gonna play that, I think, in December too. And we got Reeves back to play a solo on it, and he just crushed it. He just did that after The Cure came off the road. And it's kind of like if the first song is kind of like the character kind of stuck in this hamster wheel, the second one will be kind of like, here's the antidote, and sort of kind of like the wiser old grizzled person telling the younger kid what they would have done differently, which, I kind of feel like that a little bit because, I spent a lot of years, in the ad industry on that hamster wheel, and
oh yeah,
I got off it, and I kind of, you have time to reflect a little bit on things you wish you would have done different, or things you wish you wouldn't have let bug you so much,
sure.
And because you realize, down the road, man, none of it mattered. There's so many things that we go through in life that's like, dude, 5 years, none of this.
It don't matter. Exactly.
And,
yeah. So would you say that Slaves Rebuild was your sleeper that came out of nowhere?
Well, we knew it was going to be different. And, it was one of the ones when I first demoed all these tracks for Sean, is the one he really liked the most. But I think, and it, having Reeves on it definitely was, just from a star power standpoint, gave it a bit of a kick in the ass. But
yeah.
I think what surprises me when people tell me what they like about it is they relate, the lyrics kind of resonate. And I wouldn't say that I didn't think that would happen, but I've just never had people, because a lot of the tracks are they're not really like Derision Cult is more kind of a lot of the tracks have to do with talking about media manipulation and kind of these more esoteric things, and for a track like that to kind of like people when they talk to them, they almost kind of talk like they raise their hand like, yeah, that's me, or I feel that. That was kind of interesting. So it's when people tell me that they kind of relate to it personally, that surprised me. I would have thought it would have been more the textures and the vibe of it. Maybe it's something that's in the background while you're, coding or something like that. So
is the track listing placement important for your album or EP releases nowadays, or no?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think that's part of the art, we started off talking about Metallica, and I grew up on thrash metal, and that's still a big part of my DNA. And when you think about those early albums, not just Metallica, but like the whole Big Four, I think there's one thing that really influenced me. It's how they always structured albums. You'd always have the big kick-ass, crazy, fast thrasher right away, Then there'd be something that'd be a little different and maybe more progressive for like that second track. Get something that's just really stomping heavy for the third track. And like that blueprint existed on, Ride the Lightning, existed on like Peace Sells, and then you go to like kind of more, in Metallica's case, they go to like that ballad in the third song and then something coming out of it that's like, or fourth song, sorry, coming out of it that's really heavy. But that kind of taking people for a ride through different moods and how you sequence that and where you leave them. Those are all things I take from being a kid, listening to those albums. And
Yes,
I think I love trying to do that. I think that's like to me, that's like the whole point of having an album, is like creating that journey that people go on. So I think it's absolutely important. I know in Mercenary, this last one, and even like these mixes, we've put a lot of thought into that. Like if you were to put this thing on, what would be a way? Like you don't want to have 2 tracks together that sound a lot alike because that's going to get boring. But you don't want to front load it with all the stompers, then the back with all the chill ones, because like that's going to get boring too. And so we definitely put a lot of thought into that. It's funny though, because when it comes to streaming and stuff, you don't really have any control over how people hear the tracks,
No, you're right.
And what's funny is, with this, the cassette, I recently got a car that has a cassette player in it, and man, that brings me back to when you had to listen, and I specifically mean sitting in the car, because if you want to rewind or listen to a song again or whatever, you had the one I got has that button where it'll flip the tape without you having to do anything.
Oh, wow.
But all those sequences and stuff, and the kind of the vibes that, it is actually kind of fun. And I feel that way about vinyl too. When I do listen to vinyl, which these days vinyl for me is mostly an outlaw acoustic country endeavor, but sides have different personalities to them and things like that. And I think all that stuff's cool to think about, and it's all part of the art,
Man, when you're talking about Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, Fleming Rasmussen, man, they caught such lightning in a bottle with every freaking song on those albums.
Yeah.
It was like, what did you do? Did you sell your soul or something? Because I mean, it was like banger after banger after banger. There's not a letdown on those 2 albums, period, that came from Fleming Rasmussen.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because now that Master of Puppets has kind of had a new day in the sun with kids getting into it because of Stranger Things, it's
thanks, Stranger
Things.
Things.
It holds up the test of time, because it's hard to think about this, but dude, that album's gonna be 40 years old here soon, but
don't say that.
But it's when I read somewhere that the reason they wanted to work with him, or the reason that all came about, was because there was a Dio album that they really liked, that was made in his studio, that Sweet Silence, and that's what kind of led them to work with him. But I haven't read it yet. Maybe you have, but there's a book out. I think it's called Back to the Front. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And it's like documents that whole process of making Master of Puppets. And it's funny. I mean, in reality, you think about, that was a band that basically lived in a van, going up and down roads in Europe, and just touring relentlessly. So by the time they made that record, the band was so freaking tight, And I will say it's going to be interesting, because I think, people always ask questions like, do you think there'll be another Master of Puppets, or will classic albums like that come back? And I think one thing Metallica really had wind in their sails, a lot of those bands did, was just, that comes from an era when a label would advance bands to, tour support money. And you would go out and play all year long, and then you'd come back and, well, a band congeals and gets really tight,
Mm-hmm.
living like that. Or sometimes they just hate each other and implode, but there's no question that the musicianship and just the vibe really was clicking by that point. And I would guess this is maybe people tell me who would know better would say I'm wrong, but I would imagine a lot of that had to do with, dude, that was a band that was just on the road constantly and playing every night and, really, really learning what works as far as making songs intense. Well, you're going to get a band like that that's going to play, churn out Master of Puppets. And I think that would be a lot different than a band today. And it's not just in metal. I mean, you see that with, I think a lot of the grunge albums in the 90s kind of had that same advantage, So it'll be interesting to see if that caliber of an album can get made in an era where bands don't because Metallica was only a band for like 3 years by the time they were writing Master of Puppets.
Yeah, they were very young. They wasn't.
There's in this day and age, having tour support or being able to buy onto tours, tour after tour, because they're on the, and be able to kind of just get out there playing as much as they did. That's really difficult to do for a new band now, if not impossible. Will that impact the kind of music that people are able to make? I don't know. But I think that's something that definitely is worth considering.
I know you've been doing this for a very long time. I've known you for a very long time. But what's that growth musically you see from yourself and everybody else who's in on this, working on these EPs from any songs, from song to song, from album to album, with sometimes the same core guys? What's that musical growth that still gives you that kick, man?
Yeah, well, I saw a quote from somebody asked Ozzy Osbourne that once, like, why is he still make great? This is like right around the time the Osbournes were huge, and his answer was, "Why? I'm not even try to imitate Ozzy because it'll sound like I'm sick." But he basically said he hasn't made his Sgt. Pepper's yet, and I think that's kind of how, in a way, that's kind of how I feel. Like there's always that. You could always do better. I think that now. I don't feel like I feel like there's things that we learned from making these tracks that we could take to make new ones. For example, like one of the things, I've really kind of taken from Sean is being a lot more mindful of the beats per minute, or the tempo. I've kind of always just, it's got to be intense, so make it fast, and he's very, at about 112 minutes, or 112 beats a minute, people that like this music don't know how to dance that fast, so it's going to have an impact on, how much it grabs them. And he pays a lot of attention to that stuff because, those things are really instrumental in making great industrial tracks. I would like to eventually, when it comes time to start writing new stuff beyond the part 2 things, that would be something I'd like to be more mindful of. So yeah, I think that fuels me nowadays, especially, doing these remixes. Again, the more I do this, the better I get at promoting things. But like, this show we got December 16th and lining things up. I love playing with the guys, that's just good and I think they'd tell you the same thing or any musician would say, man, there's something to just getting in a room with your buddies and just jamming some loud music, and playing instruments and being visceral. The older I get and the more life goes on, it's almost like the more I need that,
Oh yeah.
And that hasn't changed a bit. So that really, nowadays that drag, because now we're, this has kind of become a live entity. That's a new dimension of it. So, and I also think too, the artwork, collaborating with different artists. I'll show you right here. This is a poster that, I don't know if you can see it, but Jim Marcus designed this for our show.
That's awesome.
On the fucking naughty list, but he did like our logo and everything, and I love working on stuff like that, or seeing what else
awesome
stuff. I'll send you one, man. They're gonna be all over the city of Chicago here soon. And I will say this too. One of the things that's really cool about being in Chicago is, there is an industrial community here, and just what other people are doing inspires me. The Joy Thieves. Jim Marcus, the guy who made that flyer. He's his band Go Fight is doing a lot of really cool stuff. Everything Sean, and the rest of the Glitch Mode crew's doing with Cyanotic and Conform Co. and Conrar and everything. Just bouncing ideas off people and stuff like that now. And I always walk away with like, oh man, I know it'd be cool to try, after hearing stuff they're doing, so that definitely helps.
All right, everybody. Derision Cult has released their new single entitled Slaves Rebuild. It's off their current album, Mercenary Notes Part 1. And their music video, like I said, will be released on October 16th, but this interview will post after that. So anyway, hopefully you went and watched that by now.
Yeah.
This post. Love having my man on here, Dave McAnally, who's helped me out tremendously here lately, and I'm always glad to have him on here. So Dave, my man, how can folks stay in touch with you as always? Buy this new single, Everything Under the Sun for Derision Cult. How can he do that, sir?
Head over to derisioncult.com. That'll take you to all the different places you can stream it, buy it, download it, share it with friends. Everything you can think of. I was trying to think of other crazy examples, but yeah, derisioncult.com, and all of our streaming links are there, all the physical merch links and so forth. And if you're in Chicago or in the Chicago area, December 16th, man, we're playing at Livewire Lounge, part of the MK Ultra Christmas party. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
And always, folks, I'll have these links in the podcast here. So that way, when you listen to it, you can hit the show more, and it has all the links there to where you can't say, I don't know where to go get it, because it's right there. Merry Christmas early from the Bod Father right there. Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up. You only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour. Please go out, check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link and our YouTube link that I would like for you guys and gals to go to subscribe to if you like what I'm doing, and I hope you guys and gals do. And please do me a favor and check out my bro, Dave McAnally of Derision Cult. Pick up their stuff right now. Everything Under the Sun, because he's good. He's got some really good stuff out there. And, man, like I said, he's been a part of the show for the good past 3.5, 4 years now. So love having Dave on here all the time. So thank you so much, my man, for the interview as always.
For sure, man.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.